Hello, everyone. I'm Kipp Snow. I'm the director of the Transportation Distribution and Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County.
Hey, Kipp. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Singer, Community Manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. We are a local maritime advocacy. I even practiced advocacy group who do whatever we can to help promote all things to do with the Port of Baltimore.
All right, let's get right into the to our shipping update for this week.
Sure. So, like we were talking about last week, we're going to start talking about these truck transactions and just kind of watching the trends. So, so for the month that began last week, going back a month, so it was we had 7,694 transactions for that month on average. And now we've gone up almost. It's early. I can't do the math. So now that we have our new truck transactions metrics for this week, we're up to 8,495 transactions for the month.
So almost 1,000.
Yes.
Count more.
Thank you for the assistant with the math this early in the morning. So if we go back the last 4 weeks, the average 1,900 a week, then 2,040, then 2,135, and then we this week we jumped up to 2,400 transactions per week. That's on average, when you look at the daily transactions every day.
So what I see with the trends over the past couple of weeks is it's in the return to normalcy.
Right.
There's slow, sustainable growth. Now, I think that everybody would like to be able to turn the key and
click.
All full-blown volumes come completely back at the top level that we were operating at.
Back over the 3,000 mark, 3,500 a day.
Right. But if you do that, then what you're doing is you may be creating bottlenecks elsewhere within the supply chain. And so during the COVID pandemic, we heard a lot of this coined term of supply chain disruptions and things like that.
We did.
What this slow, sustainable return to normalcy that we are seeing here actually, I think, helps with the related truck transactions, the congestion. Keep in mind, we are down by a bridge in the area, so there's already congestion within the interstates and the tunnels and the alike. Having this slower, sustainable return will allow for that integration into what we have as far as infrastructure and operations here in the region. So
that's a good point. I didn't think about that, because what would it look like if? Correct. It would look like when Bart Simpson repainted the parking lines at the grocery store, right? You remember that episode? And then everybody pulls in, they can't get out of their cars.
Right.
So,
same kind of concept there. Yeah. Can't believe well, maybe we should look at the Simpsons a little bit more and see if it tells our future of.
Yeah. Well, there is some interesting stuff in there.
Anyway, I'm not, if I look at, as much as I want to have full blown, top level metrics and volume coming through, this may actually be helping us out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I do want to. So these are the photos that the port showed in association with that post that we had 12 ships in.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, which is really cool. And then
quite nice to see all of the berths filled like that.
Right.
And what you see right here is this is Dundalk Marine Terminal.
Yes.
As if we were looking towards the northwest. And so you've got, all the Wallenius Wilhelms in operations. There's an ACL ship that's got some containers. That's what is it? A Conroe or, low row, lift on, roll off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hybrid ship right there, that ACL ship that will allow for multiple types of cargo.
Right. And then we have another one here. This is a cool shot. Now these were taken by the port photographer,
Oh,
Bill McCallan.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Give him some credit for that. Absolutely.
yeah.
So we got berth 4 here right in front of us with the Maersk ship, and then I believe 3 where the MSC ship is parked, and in the far left side of the seam of the image, you can see the Savannah parked right there.
Right. And then there's another small container ship down there too.
Right there at 2. Yeah, I see that.
Right. So like looking forward to next week, there isn't a space where there's not a ship import for Seagirt Marine Terminal for those containers.
Good.
So
Okay.
that's good. And one of them is one of those big evergreens, the T class. Now
Okay.
that was interesting when you said T class. I mean, did you just call it that, or did you find it referred to as that somewhere? You did?
No, that's what the Evergreen steamship line referenced, that particular class of ships, and they label them based on either the era of the group that was built.
All the ships are, I think, all the names of the ships begin with a T.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's how they help to identify what that ship class is. Correct.
And that's kind of what Evergreen does. All their ships, even the branded ships. Remember last week how we talked about branded and not branded, which I still don't have a clear understanding of. But anyway, yeah, that's how, like the newest ones that we're going to talk about a little later, they're considered the M class. And all those ships will have an M name. And there's supposed to be 20 of them. Anyway, so including one of this week upcoming, including one of the big evergreens, the Taurus, 14,424 TEUs. So that's pretty cool.
It's going to be a pretty large one coming through here.
Right. Yeah. It's just nice to see that. Like I said last week, and I'm a hobbyist. I'm passionate about this stuff. But I really don't know the ins and outs of container terminals and how things get here and how things rebound from a tragic accident like this. But what I saw, what I was hoping, what I thought was, for a while there, for the first few months, we didn't have these big ships coming in. And so you can't have the big ships doing a whole lot of transactions if you don't have the big ships here first.
Correct.
So, let's get them into town, and then once they're back on the regular schedule, and the biggest ships are the Zim line and the Evergreen line, and gosh, we had 2 big Zim ships in this week.
Mm-hmm.
And they're interesting because the hulls look lower, but the container stacks are higher.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the effective height is the same, but it just looks like that they have a lot more containers stacked on top than the other ships do.
Yeah, it is interesting to see different ship designs and how the ships or how the ships are designed in order to go and handle maybe certain markets or certain products, which kind of leads us into the next topic that we were going to talk about. And you mentioned in the last podcast the Wallenius Marine ship that was I believe was up there at Trade Point Atlantic. Is that
right? Which is interesting because Wallenius never goes to Trade Point. I mean, typically doesn't go there. And then when I saw Wallenius Marine, I'm used to Wallenius Wilhelmsen.
Correct.
And I saw a different name and a different look in a different place, but a familiar name, and it really got me curious. Like,
Sure.
what is that about?
Yeah. So there was an article that came out in Shipyard News, and the Shipping Telegraph this past week on it. This is the result of an agreement between Volkswagen and Wallenius Wilhelmsen Solutions, and what they have done is created or designed and built the next generation of ro-ro ships.
Mm-hmm.
This is a ship that is really has the environmental aspects taken into consideration. It is a LNG ship,
Oh,
but there are some other features in it that help reduce, the environmental or that carbon footprint.
did we
One of
talk?
the one of,
Did we talk that it was LNG last week? I'm I'm wondering if the old itis is kicking in, and I just forgot, or
I don't think
'cause
that
I
we
don't recall that.
I don't think that we chatted about that.
Okay.
It was just a kind of observation or statement of, hey, the ship is here.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things this ship it has been designed so that when it is at full weight capacity,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to carry any ballast water in order to keep the balance of the ship upright,
Hmm.
which is quite interesting that they would go that far to make sure. But what that means is that they always, or they have to maximize that weight on the ship and pay a lot more attention to that balance than if they did, if they had the ballast tanks, then the ballast tanks could go and make up that balance.
Yeah. So I'd like to have somebody. Maybe we can dive into that in another
Mm-hmm.
podcast because I'm
Sure.
not. They added more weight, or they don't have ballast tanks, so that
No,
this way it's more cargo. I mean, what are
you know
they
what
saying
what
there?
what
I'm not
what
following.
what was explained in the article is that the structure has been optimized for the intended trade, which in this particular case is Volkswagen vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you think about just across all of let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
Ro-ro ships can carry anything that has wheels.
Right.
So cars, passenger trucks, buses. They can
Right.
also carry larger vehicles, so farm equipment, buses,
Yep.
large trucks, and so that's why you see a lot
Subway
of
cars.
all those types of vehicles out there at Dundalk Marine Terminal,
Mm-hmm.
and those ships will come in, and you will look, those all of those various size vehicles will get loaded. What's interesting about those ro-ro ships is that they're like a floating parking garage.
Right.
The difference is the floors and the ceilings inside the ro-ro ship can be moved up or down hydraulically based on the product that's on
Yeah.
that particular level. So if you
Yeah.
have a bunch of compact cars, they're going to jack the ceiling down quite lower, so that the next section can carry the much bigger pieces of equipment.
Right.
So they've designed this marine ship, this Wallenius Marine ship, so that
Mm.
it for the specific trade of products that they're moving, which is Volkswagen
Now
vehicle.
I'm grasping. Now I'm catching on because now you probably have more decks. They're probably less movable if everything you're putting on there is a whopping 5 foot high. I mean, your restriction might be the workers at 6 and a half feet, right? So you can pack a lot more in if you're not doing transformers and helicopters and railway cars and who knows what and giant boxes of
Yep. So the benefit here is that they get to take advantage of all these environmentally sound practices within the design. The drawback is
you're
you're only
limited.
going to be able to bring in these types of vehicles on this particular ship. So that's why you probably are not going to see a large volume of these exact ships, because it's the demand for Volkswagen to be moving these products, or their cars around, is not going to be as much as the industry
Mhm.
as a whole.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is interesting because, when I first read the article, we hear so much other um, there's all these different fuels, and there's LNG, and what was one of the there was another recent one.
Well, we did just report on one being electric.
Right, but there was another different fuel. I can't remember because it began with an M. I can't. Too early, brain's not working. But when I read this article, it doesn't sound like a huge, significant, like big announcement kind of thing.
Right.
It's more like tweaks and subtlety. Which I mean, if you want to get to here, I mean, you eventually got to take some steps to get there.
Correct. Yes, and it also sounded like that they were putting in some like newly designed products or newly designed solutions, like actually moving the ramp for loading and offloading cargo. You typically see with ro-ros the ramp on the back end of the vessel. Well, in this case, there is a center ramp. And so that was designed for better efficiency and the cargo height.
Well, I do think that's an addition.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. And then even the vessel itself has a hydrodynamically optimized bow that reduces wind resistance. So here we are looking at are we sticking this thing through a wind tunnel? Almost is, I don't know that there's a wind tunnel big enough to stick it in, but we're now starting to look at wind resistance within the waterborne vessels of, you wouldn't have typically thought about that
right.
That optimizing that, and if you think it like what NASCAR does, they want to have an aerodynamically sound vehicle to help race it.
Well, I'm sure
but reducing drag on a cargo ship is going to help it to move forward and be much more energy efficient and not relying on the fuel in order to keep it going.
Right. So. How many fewer tons or gallons are you burning a year by making that, relatively small tweak on the bow? So we have you seen the some of the container ships where they've actually put like a cowling over the bow, like up from the bow, leading to where the containers start, to try to.
It's no different than out on the highway. You see some of these 53-foot trucks that have the little fender underneath of the between the wheel beds to help reduce that airflow, and just that little piece of vinyl or whatever it is that's there can significantly reduce the fuel consumption in a truck. So it's this kind of the same premise.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they probably did a miniature model in a wind tunnel.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that there is some type of marine vessel designers, architects, structural engineers who have done some type of mathematical equation to go figure out the
right. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to do a little audible here because forgot to cover this last week.
Okay.
And we're just going to kind of go. So this is pretty cool.
Oh, yes. The Port of Baltimore magazine. Yes.
The Port of Baltimore magazine. And do you know, I think anybody can get this.
Yes. If you go to I believe it's portofbaltimoredirectory.com, and I'll go and put the link up.
Oh, perfect.
That is the port's site for all information. So there are some statistics and contact information. They have all of the back issues of the Port of Baltimore magazine there, so you can go for your viewing pleasure and look at.
And then even some of the ads are cool, where you're looking at some of the names that we know in town, if you're paying attention, to the port, so like McAllister. So, I mean, and I'm just being silly, even if you just like pictures.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, there are.
And then like, here's an advertisement from Trade Point Atlantic and talking about their new container terminal. And then
give a plug to Belts Logistics. I'm sure Chris Brown would appreciate that.
Right. And then I think every week there's an article by Jonathan
yeah.
Daniels, executive director of Port of Baltimore. So there's really a lot in here, and I thought this was kind of cool. So this is really the first issue of this since the port has been open, I think.
Right.
You and I have been talking about this for weeks, and we've been down in the details and, just covering this every week, step by step. It seems so far removed to us because and when this comes out, what, quarterly or something?
It depends. I think the past year or so, it's been about quarterly. It's gone anywhere from a monthly edition to a quarterly edition
Right.
over the years.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Baltimore is back, baby. Woo! Well, wait a minute. Hang on. There we go. Baltimore is back, baby. Well, we're getting there. We've been covering that.
Is the port going to come back and well, don't mark up our magazine?
Yeah, how could you?
That's all right.
So
go check that out. We'll put the link up, but you can get that. Everybody can get that digital issue and all of the back issues.
That's awesome. But I mean, the print issue, can anybody get the print?
Yeah, I believe that they also at that website has a place where you can subscribe and you put
you fill out the form, and if we're wrong, well then you tried and you might not get it. But
and just go back to the digital edition, please.
Right. And so I think for folks who who like to read, you'd like to have something in your hands besides reading everything on the computer, and you're passionate about the port, I think this would be a really cool opportunity. And maybe they'll get like a couple hundred new subscribers and go, what just happened? How did that so we're going from that happy goofy, or me making it goofy, to this was interesting. So the coal ship loader, the telescoping conveyor that rotates out over the ship and dumps coal into the holds of the ship, actually failed and broke and fell on the ship.
Where was this at?
At Curtis Bay.
Oh, really?
And I didn't know this. I look at this stuff all the time, and I guess I forgot. So they have two piers there with two ship loaders.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly the other one, that I would think, oh, well, once you get this fixed and you bring in some cranes and just move it over to the other pier and just keep going. Well, it's kind of like Trade Point, where they have different water heights and depths. And so where it was the big one. You can't move it over to the other one because it's a lot shallower. And I didn't. But apparently there was a crack in the extension boom that caused it to fail.
Oh.
And collapsed into the hold.
Ooh.
Right. Now, since then, the ship is gone and it's supposedly coming back. I can't really figure that out, but one of our sources. Go ahead.
No, I can continue on, because my questions were going to be damage to the ship. What type of?
Oh, supposedly there was no real damage to the ship.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't, I think around the holds there might be some railings or something, but I mean, no significant.
If it left the port, then that means it passed all of the inspections, and the Coast Guard did everything.
It supposedly went to the anchorage, and then it is then coming back in a couple of days,
Okay.
So that's like the official schedule.
Okay.
But my source tells me that it can't go to the other pier. because it's too full already. So I'm not sure. But the source told me he wanted to share something. He's like, McLean is the one who came in and they used their cranes to lift it off the ship. And he said, man, they really have a lot of talent in their company. They did great work, super professional on how it was handled, from planning and executing. Just about everything was thought through, safety of the crew and ship, and just
Nice. Okay.
So that's good to hear that in another, but obviously much smaller accident, that you've got some great professionals right here in town that know how to handle and deal with this stuff.
Yeah. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have some? I did see some pictures of the Dali this week that looked quite different than what we are used to.
You could say that. Let me Dali pics that some folks have shared on the Facebook group.
Okay.
So I think here she is. This is so she was in a berth at the south end of the Navy Yard. If you're looking at a map of the port down in Norfolk, it's where the river runs north and south. On the right, or the eastern side of the river, all the way down the bottom, the last berth, that's where she was, and that's where they were doing some more work, taking some more things off the bow, removing some damaged containers, all kinds of things. And then she went back across the river to, is it Virginia International Terminal, VIT?
Yeah, VIT, yeah.
So I think they have two different container terminals down there. But so she went back there to get the rest of the containers off.
Okay.
Right. So I think this is the shot someone posted to the Facebook group of when she was just leaving the container terminal with all the containers off.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah, this was the shot that I saw, and it was
look how high. Look at the bow.
Yep.
And look at the stern. And it's too bad. Can we here? Let me see if
zoom in a little bit.
Without
the
that
pixelating the image.
I think that might be the propeller right there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's having fun playing with the options there, huh?
Right. Yeah, I went too far.
What was interesting to this is that we don't often see ships completely empty coming in. We typically see them either at full capacity or at some like mid capacity, but to see a ship of this caliber this empty is quite impressive.
Right.
Stands the whole issue that it's the Dali, but
right. And then remember so because when we were talking about these ships coming into Baltimore, I think it's my understanding that the air draft, so how high the ship is, how much room it has under the bridge, depending on ballast and cargo and such, is really the restriction.
Correct.
We talk a lot about the 50-foot channel, but it's been my experience that it's kind of rare when a container ship comes in almost at max draft. In other words, deepest in the water that it can possibly go. That happens with coal ships all the time when they leave full. It happens 4 to 6 times a week. But with container ships, they get close, 42, 45 maybe. As a matter of fact, one of them came in at 45 this week. Which
okay.
Wow. But 48 is pretty much the max. The harbor's rated for 50. You're not going to get any closer than that.
Right.
But so we talked about that why aren't they taking the containers off? Why don't they just take all the containers off? And the captain of the port from the Coast Guard said, you can't, because you take weight off, it gets higher. And so now this is with all the weight off, of course, not some, but I mean, look how much higher it is in the water. You couldn't even see the bulbous bow.
Correct.
You know, that little feature in the front of the boat, in the front of the ship. You couldn't even see that before. So yeah, definitely a lot higher in the water than it was. Look at that.
Mm.
And that is the prop. You actually can see it. Let's see if we can. Look at that. Yeah. So there's another one. So I think she's back at that berth that I was talking about where they do all this work, which is right next to where they keep the Comfort, which is a little bit of interesting irony there. Since the Comfort was here for many years and had been transferred to Norfolk now. What's it been? Has it been 20 years now?
It's been a while.
I should know that, but let me see how many. So, and it was explained to me that in this photo, so this kind of wall or barrier here is designed to kind of keep big waves off the cargo. And so you can see how that got pretty damaged. And it is interesting when you look at this, that this side of the ship doesn't really look that damaged.
I noticed that.
Right? You thought there would have been, I mean, I think there's a little something here, but I mean, you would have thought that, you know, this whole top edge would have something.
Would represent something that's, you know.
You could see some damage. But of course, we've seen the other side, and that's just a mangled, destroyed mess. That might be, no. Okay. That's our next subject, so. Or our next subject to share pictures by. So, every week we try to do a key bridge update. Sometimes there are updates, sometimes there aren't. But I did run across one where Congressman Ben Cardin says that they're nearing a deal for key bridge funding legislation. So can you give us some deets on that?
Yes, and to kind of summarize what was said in the article, to date, legislation to approve the bridge funding hasn't passed Congress yet, but they're getting close to it. Cardin stated that the Biden administration is committed to covering the full cost, and then out of the federal highway fund, and that and Maryland has already stated we're ready to go to move forward with all of the different contracts that need to be awarded. And that according to Ben Cardin, the Senate cleared that hurdle of getting the committees to sign off on providing 100% federal funding before Congress recessed for August. So that was important for them to go ahead and get this done. We didn't want this to be delayed just because of Congress's typical scheduling. But according to Cardin, this. Oh, I'm sorry. Timestamp 36. But Cardin also said that the bill still needs to be passed, and there's still work that has to be done to appropriate funding for the project over the next 4 to 5 years. So this isn't just a one and done, and then we just keep going. There's still a significant amount of work that the feds have to be involved with the bridge throughout the work. So just keep in mind with that process that it still is fluid. It still is a collaborative work between multiple state, local, and federal agencies and the contractors and the alike. So, and Cardin said that the state is looking at a one consolidated contract rather than multiple smaller contracts to complete the project, which would streamline the rebuild process. And we've talked a little bit about that.
Right.
He still is reiterating what that model is.
Right. That streamlined process to get this bridge rebuilt as fast as we can. And there's been a lot of different things that we've talked about, from environmental to contractual procedures and how bidding goes. And so a lot of different ways that they're finding to speed up the process.
Correct.
Which is great. I think we'd all love to see the recovery of that bridge or the rebuilding of that bridge to be done, as soon as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
I was driving through the tunnel yesterday afternoon to get home, and you start to see some of the same patterns of traffic that are now starting to kind of relax into, and people are starting to get used to that part of it. And it kind of made me think about at what point am I going to when am I going to have that opportunity to drive over the new bridge and go back to my 30-minute commute instead of my hour commute, and what that's going to feel like. So that's
so what was it the end of September? I should be able to just repeat that off the top of my head. Was it the end of September that, because there was actually it's not just the end of 28. There was a certain month. I think it was the end of September.
It was like the September, October of that time frame.
Yeah. So maybe let's just say Halloween 28. That's what you can.
Maybe we put up like a little counter that says however many days to the new bridge opening, and see how close.
I wonder if they'll do that once they get close.
Yeah.
Or if they just.
I'm sure that there will be a whole bunch of pomp and circumstance and celebrations, and
once it opens, absolutely. Oh my goodness! I'm just
leading up to it. There'll be a lot of press.
Right. I just wonder if they'd be willing to. How far out from the actual opening will they be willing to, 25 days till Christmas, how far out will they be willing to
do that?
Commit to a date. Be interesting to see.
I would guess, and this is all speculation.
Oh, of course. But
going up, it is probably 6 months, 6 months to a year out. They're going to have a pretty good sense as to when the opening is going to be. And all of the ceremonial, transactions that have to take place, they have to plan for that. So that we'll have I think we'll have a pretty good sense.
It will be quite interesting to watch them build it. Yeah.
It looks like through some of the postings on social media from the John Brown that they're starting to come towards the end of their repair work down in Norfolk.
It does look that way. Let's do the
do you have some
seat of our pants Facebook thing like we did last week here. So I'm just going to read through this really quick. Work on the ship's hull has progressed to the point that the shipyard began to reinstall the plugs in our double bottom tanks to start refilling them with fresh ballast water. Volunteer crew will assist with this and add chemicals to each tank to inhibit rust and biological growth, which is something I never thought of.
Well,
it makes sense, but
when you mean biological growth,
I guess that means
this is the ballast tanks, right?
Right.
But okay, so when you
in water from the bay, right? So there's life in that water.
Correct.
They're not running it through some crazy filter, I would guess.
So they didn't tie into the city water line.
Right. Or
so they have to
bring how many of those pull tanker trucks by.
Yeah, none of that. They're pulling the water right out of the bay.
Right. Our new depth sounder was installed this morning. It's mounted in a specially designed valve to allow for replacing the transducer unit without needing a dry dock. That's cool. Looking forward. Interesting that the old transducer is about a foot across and probably weighs 100 pounds, while the new one is about the size of 2 tuna cans.
Huh. Okay.
Right. And does the same work as 2 of the old units. Welding work is underway on the last 2 hull repairs, and the rest have been tested and improved. Last but not least, work continues on polishing our propeller until it's nice and shiny. So, but I wanted to share some of these photos. I mean, you're under the ship, and then here on the left are the supports. Do you know what what those supports are? The big, are they just called blocks? Do they have like a maritime lingo name? All the blocks that they set out to bring in the ship, and they set it down on top.
But I've always heard them referred to as blocks. So
right. So that's what they are. That's what these are here on the left. Here's some more work. You can kind of see some squares here that were welded in. And this must be
Is that the new piece you just talked about?
I think so. So you can access it from the inside of the ship
to
replace it. I mean, that's brilliant.
You just saved a whole bunch of money.
Right. In case it goes bad. Maybe they bought a spare. That would be a good idea. Maybe we'll ask about that if we get a chance. And then I thought this was cool. Tested United States Coast Guard. Okay. So, there's a process for getting this ship back on the water. There has to be a lot of inspections, a lot of approvals. How do you go about doing that? How many instruments are there? How do you look at everything? How do you know that you already looked at everything? And so here it is marked that, okay, we did this in case, so you don't have to rely on some other way of tracking. There's a visual. You go look at, oh, we already did this. So I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, that won't be there for long, but
correct.
Once it's in the water, it won't matter.
It won't matter, correct, yeah.
Right. Here's some welding action. Here's some more, and then you can kind of, I can't zoom in on these, but remember you had those plates that kind of held the big section in place, and we talked about that last week, how they kind of weld those plates in place to kind of hold the piece and then weld it and then take those adapter plates off, for lack of a better term, and you can kind of see those lines here.
Yeah. You can see the lines where the plates existed and they already cut them off and ground it down.
Right, yeah. And there's the work on the prop.
Looks like they have quite a bit of polishing they need to do if they're going to make that one shiny.
And I forget. So they did, at some point, they did talk about how tall that prop was. And so there's a guy who's...
Well, I was just about to say, look at the point of reference there.
6 foot. So we're at least 15 feet in diameter. I don't recall what the number was, but anyway, yeah. So that was interesting.
They do have a bill that's coming up that they have to pay Kelowna Shipyard for the work. So
have any updates about fundraising? Do they?
No, they haven't. Other than the past couple of social media posts with the updates to the extra work they had to do, they haven't really come out with a full campaign or anything or any announcements. But I know that they are going to be working on that. So,
how does that work? If you don't have enough money, do they? And I'm just being funny. You know how like they always show like like when you win the lottery, there's this giant. They hand you this giant cardboard check.
Right.
Is there a giant cardboard credit card that John W. Brown has? Like, okay, I wonder how that works. When you're a big ship and, well, you really haven't raised the money yet. Time to go. You can't afford to sit there.
You can't sit there and they can't push you out and sink off of the dry dock in the river because you got a hole in the.
Well, no, I meant, okay, so everything's done, right? But, I guess it can't be, and here we are speculating like a couple of people that don't know what they're talking
We have
about.
no clue.
So how does that work? Maybe you don't have enough money, so they can't keep you there because then you'll be paying more each day, and then but that does happen. That did.
I'm going to assume that the powers that be have some type of an agreement set up so that but the bill still has to be paid. So
right, and they have a relationship with this yard. They've been going to this yard for years for this specific type of regular work. So I'm sure there's a plan.
Let's listen out to what that plan might be. But in the meantime, if anybody is inclined to do want to support them in their efforts to fundraise, make sure you go to the John W. Brown's website. I'll put it here on the as a link here below, and then you can go and look at their report outs from the work they're doing, and then donate if you so choose to do so.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. So, do you remember the story about the P520 crash boat?
Briefly, I remember us talking about that some here.
Right. So this is So I think Mike's going to be able to share this like he's done it before, like he knows what he's doing. In one fell swoop, and it's not going to be a big deal. All right, so here we go. So here is this. Man, how cool is that? Here's this. Now look at those letters. What in the world? United States Army Air Force P520, right? P520 crash boat.
Now wait a second. This is a boat, right?
A boat.
And
like 80 foot made out of wood.
And so what is the Army Air Force try? What I'm confused.
I think if you go back in your history, the Air Force was once part of the Army. Way back when.
Which helps to answer some of the questions of this being a wooden boat.
Maybe I can't. I really can't speak to that.
I don't know.
I'd be totally guessing. But its purpose is, now you hear crash boat, and I mean that sounds horrible. Why would you crash a boat? It's a stupid name. But so it's for rescuing downed pilots in World War II. This thing's got 2 big diesels in it and can go pretty fast. Like an 80-foot rescue speedboat made out of wood from World War II.
Interesting.
Right. And they made these all over the place. They actually made them in Cambridge.
Really? Huh.
Yes. So someone acquired the boat a couple of years ago, and they wound up bringing it up here. Let me see if I can. So this might be the rail yard where they made them.
Wow.
The yard, where they have rails, they can run the boats up onto. But I'm going to skip ahead. So this was it being shipped on a barge when it first got here a couple of years ago. And then they didn't do this right. And there's damage to the hull. Look at that.
That's impressive.
That's dramatic, isn't it? Right. And this looks like one of those lift ships that we get here. Here's the crane. But anyway, so it gets here, and a while later we figure out that the people who are managing the boat, for lack of a better term, are they're using the money personally that they're raising. They don't have insurance. They're just
there's some issues there.
There were some big legal issues. And I'm trying to be generic here in my descriptions.
Sure.
So the boat was taken over by a new manager, for lack of a better term, and they are trying to spin up, a 501c3 organization, get it repaired, and then find a new home for it, where people can go visit. Right.
Okay.
So this boat was actually on our creek here.
Really?
Just kind of long-term temporary storage. I know it sounds ironic, but it's meant to be temporary, but found a place where she can hang out until they got things straight again, and they were able to, arrange for moving it.
Sure.
And so let's go back and look at I wanted to get to some of those other. So here it is I think this is the rail yard, the shipyard in Cambridge that has this rail system, which is kind of cool. I think they pulled her out to paint her a while back. Again, here is on. Well, this might be on the ship. This looks like it's a ship, not a barge. Anyway, yeah, and being lifted off the ship, but regrettably there was some damage.
Sure.
To the hull. So she's leaving our creek here today, and going to hopefully her next home, which, because of some agreements and such, we're not at liberty to divulge at this point. But cool to see that process being started, and such a unique piece of history.
Absolutely, yeah.
That we have here, and kind of close to a place, on the bay, and right down there in Cambridge, they actually made these things.
Sure.
So,
a lot of local connection and local history.
Yeah, a lot. And so, speaking of which, I think we're gonna start doing, like, this week in Port of Baltimore history.
Yeah, I want to.
Idea. You and I have talked about that, and we've done a few little segments on things like this. But maybe we can get a regular thing going. That would be cool.
Yeah, I think I'd like to do that. With our port being over 300 years old, it's actually, the port's older than the city. We have a lot of connectivity with that history throughout time, not only with the B&O Railroad and different port entities that. Yes.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
The port is older than the city.
Yep.
Which reminds us of what? A DVD news series.
The port that built a city and state.
There you go.
Is that your reference?
That's what I was. That's what I was aiming for.
Helen Bentley's news series in the 50s and 60s. Yeah, we're going to take it in that same spirit of promoting the Port of Baltimore. There's a whole bunch of history that's there that I don't know that everybody knows about. So we're going to try to do this each week, try to find the nuggets of history during that week. It's going to take some research. We're going to, we may not be able to hit everything.
I heard you might have a new research department that we're working with.
Yeah, we've got a research department here that's collaborating here at the house to
nice.
extra staff for the podcast. How about that?
Nice.
We'll add them to the salary
in-house, as it were.
That's correct. but for this week, I wanted to actually I went back 1 year. And so this week in August of 2023, we had the largest ship ever to call on the Port of Baltimore, which was Evergreen's Evermax.
Mm-hmm.
This was a big deal a year ago. Now, why I really wanted to bring this to light,
Mm-hmm.
it seems just like yesterday that this thing came through. I remember all the news and the pressers on this, but there's a lot that is transacted in the past year.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I may, and so I'm just guessing from memory that these M-class Evergreens, ever since that first one has been here, have probably been here, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 times.
Yep.
They aren't super regular, but
Do you know why?
no, I have no idea.
The main premise is they're a bigger ship. They can carry more cargo. They don't have to make as many ports of call. This may be on a much longer distance route
Oh,
than some of the smaller ones.
all right. And so, how about this nugget? That this M class are the same breadth and length, so 369 by 51 meters, right? As the former largest container ships to visit the port, which were that T class that we talked about, the unbranded Evergreen T class. And from a local retired pilot, he heard that they were considering ports like Baltimore and other ports that are restricted in an air draft, and they found a way to pack what? What's the number? I should know this. 700, like 700 or 1,000 more TEUs into the same box,
footprint,
if you will.
So total TEUs for these ships is at the 15,500 range.
Mm-hmm.
Size comparison, that's 4 football fields long.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's definitely a significant size. But now, kind of in the same reference of the Wallenius Marine ship, they're looking at customizing and the design of these ships to go and maximize the amount of cargo it can carry.
Right. That's a great, because I think, the industries are starting to adapt.
Yeah.
Okay, not everybody can, which is really cool what they did in New York to the Bayonne Bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They took the roadway, ran it through a different structure in the truss, and then rebuilt the roadway and just made the bridge 40 feet higher. Not everybody can do that. I mean, it's really cool when you look at the pictures and you think about the concept of it. But not everybody can do that. So what can we do to maximize our service to these smaller ports who are restricted? And I think even the cruise companies are getting on board now.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, so we, it's great that we have all this work for our ships that are smaller and 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it might be smarter, instead of trying to keep these 20-year-old ships up, that we're going to start building some smaller cruise ships for these other ports. You think from a maintenance standpoint, it would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going to be running a smaller ship, I mean, I get it. You want to build the bigger ships. The more people you have on it, the less.
Correct.
But if you're going to be running them anyway,
right,
the new ones have to be more efficient and less maintenance.
I think that if I look at kind of trends within shipbuilding, and I'm not a shipbuilding expert, but if you look at what ships were built, within the past 20 years, and you saw the size just naturally get bigger and bigger because that focus was relying on economies of scale.
Right.
The more containers you can get on a ship, the cheaper the per unit or the per container cost is going to be.
Yes.
But now we're starting to run into that. There were those questions of, well, how big are they really going to get? Can we,
right?
There really are some limitations to height and depth that they really have to go and address. So, there may be some bigger ship designs that come through, but they're only going to be able to call on certain ports around the world. Now you're starting to see these ship designs go and accommodate the existing infrastructure, because if you've got a bridge in place, and that it's going to be 70, it's got 50 years left on its lifespan, you're not bringing the bridge down just to allow for some extra larger ships to come through.
Yeah, those are
easier
unusual.
It's easier to build the ship than it is to build a bridge. So
yes.
All right, so we're going to try to do that each week. Have a little nugget of Port of Baltimore history. So if anybody has some topics that they may be interested in learning about from the historical perspective, or they have a nugget themselves they wish to share, I think you have a your email address would be
right. So any podcast suggestions, just email me, Mike, at baltimoreshipwatchers.com.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And remember, Baltimore is back, baby. All right. I think we're done, huh?
Yep, I think that's about it.
Yeah. So remember, so we have a Facebook group with almost 16,000 people on there. Just a great community, a friendly place to learn about the port, find out what's going on, what's coming and going. We have the live stream camera, this podcast, a website full of information. We're on Twix and Instagram and YouTube as Balto Ches.
That's correct. And if you want to listen to it in your car, get the audio version of the podcast. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Right. So if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell to be alerted to new podcasts as they come available.
All right.
Give it a shot.
3, 2, 1.
Happy ship watching.
We just did it.
We did? See, that sounded good on your end?
It sounded great on my end.
Oh.
Now you have to work again some more on advocacy.
Yucks. Man. I'm just going to avoid that word at all costs.
Maybe just come up with a different word.
I thought I had it. I had it.
I had to practice it in my head before I just said it just now.
Oh. Is it the camera or the mic? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Just blame it on the technology in general.
Yeah, I'm fine saying it any other time. I even got guys giving me a hard time about it on the camera chat. On the live stream chat. And they're spelling it out like in capital letters. Okay, with like a dash in between. Like, you dummy, why can't you say it? Anyway.
All right.
All right, everybody. Have a great week.
Have a great week.